Boy, what a day. Yo, once again, you're back with Live with the KHive. You know we stay live, whether it's night or the daytime, doing our thing as we always do, bringing that thing with you. It's your host, Drew Comments, sitting here with the realest feelers you ever seen and heard of, thinking all things Kamala, all things positive. We're going to go ahead and go around the room because we understand a lot of people just have not made our acquaintance yet. But you're going to get to know us, baby. Again, I'm Drew Comments, and I'm here sipping on, keeping it simple, really, sipping on some lemonade in a red Solo cup, keeping it hood, you feel me? What y'all doing over here? You know what? Heather, how you feeling? What you got going on?
I'm good. Hey, y'all. Heather Rose here. Heather Rose Goes on all the social media. I am over here. You know, I gotta have my whiskey, old fashioned. Thank you.
I love it, y'all. She know about them old fashions. If you ain't on old fashions, you know, for real. Maya, how you doing, girl?
I'm good. Maya T. Contreras on all social media. The T is for Tiffany. Drew, you didn't know that. We were talking about Tiffany. The T is for Tiffany. Yeah, so Maya T. Contreras on all social media. Some dry white wine, just like I'm going to be tonight. Very, very dry and sharp. Hopefully I will be. Thank you.
I thought T stood for tea because you always spilling tea. I figured that's what, okay, well, there we go. Shows what I know. Sydney, what it do?
Yo, what's good? It's your girl, and I'm back with it. You know who it is. It's the Sydney A, and that is my Twitter name. And tonight, your girl got some, I'm getting loose with the goose as I always do as I've been for the last 3 weeks. And I got a little bit of lemonade with the goose. So, it should be interesting.
Get it. I'm not even mad at you, for real. Reecie, back in the world once again. How you feeling?
I'm good. Hey, y'all. I'm Reecie, Black Woman Views, and on my social media, I am taking a cue from Heather with an old fashioned.
Y'all really on the old. I missed the memo, man. Next week, I promise you. Yo, Kenny.
I'm gonna have to go get me some Jameson so I could be fancy like y'all.
I want to get fancy with everybody, but clearly I'm just hood. Y'all got glasses and stuff. I got a red Solo cup. Kenny, please tell me you're on the same level.
Shout out to Khalees, though. I just wanted to say I got my Khalees shirt on today, and shout out to the goddess. Her birthday's coming up. She is currently working on some new music, so shout out to Miss Khalees.
How old is that shirt?
Like a week.
All right, okay, you got that during the I'm Boston stage. No, but for real, I need to know, Kenny, I need your help for real. I need to make sure that I'm not the only one being ghetto out here. I can always depend on you to be the hood one on the group. Don't leave me hanging.
Well, I'm drinking something dark, but it ain't liquor, child. It ain't liquor. It's just Dr. Pepper, y'all. Y'all already know. Kenny, king of clapbacks. If you say some smack, I'm gonna clap your back. So don't play no games.
Period.
Okay.
It don't matter. You got a glass. After you finish with that, it's going in the sink. You're gonna wash it and then throw it.
But there's bootleg There's bootleg ice in here. It's white. Okay. It's just whatever was my ice machine made, okay? It's all mission shape and all this other stuff. Broken ice up in here.
I feel you. Well, look, we are getting very comfortable here as we try to do on these sessions. Speaking of getting comfortable, there is such thing as getting too comfortable. This morning, Joe Biden, Vice President Joe Biden, is feeling some heat after some comments that were made on the Breakfast Club during an interview with Charlamagne the God. In which, I'm going to have Kenny go ahead and go into the details of it. I do want to make it known that he did apologize for his comments, but words are like toothpaste. Once they get out, so I'll take them back. Kenny, what's up with your boy, man?
Joe, I don't know what's going on with you. You already know I'm an avid supporter of you. I done, come out with videos, dance all up in my room, got people excited, all this stuff for you, Joe. And I'm just so disappointed. And what I heard today, the problem that I had with Joe Biden is he was asked from Charlamagne the God about, his voter outreach in terms of Black and possibly, picking a Black woman as his VP. And he kind of got a little defensive, at least to me. His demeanor came off a little off to me. And it just made it feel like when he was talking about, these Black women that he's supposed to be courting and vetting, it sounded to me, and this is just how it came off to me, is just like he was basically saying, just be glad that I'm even considering a black woman VP, and it just put a bad taste in my mouth. Especially being the fact that so many black people have came out for you and actually advocated for you, made calls, donated their time, money, and effort to try to get you elected. And the only reason why you're doing so well is because we did save your campaign, and we do deserve a pat on the back for the things that we did to actually bring you back up. So it's just not fair. And the problem that I have is the message of that, just, you know, how that affects black women as the election keeps going on. Because here's the problem. Black women work 10 times harder, have to run 5 times faster to get half the credit or no credit at all. And I can only imagine what this is actually sending a message to the little black girls and the little black people, that all the black people who actually support you, Joe. And you can't go into these black spaces and get too comfortable to say certain things or have a certain, you know, demeanor about you. Because just saying that, oh, you know, you're not black if you don't vote for me, you're not black if you vote for Trump, that sends the wrong message, because there's no question that black people are not going to be voting for Donald Trump. But the real question is, what are you going to do in the upcoming, you know, election to actually get us to turn out? Because it's not a matter of voting for Donald Trump. We need a reason, just like Midwestern white voters, to get up and actually turn out. We are a voting demographic, and we're not a monolith either. And we deserve a seat at the table, and we deserve something back. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to leave that up to the rest of the panel, because I can keep going on and on and on. But I think y'all deserve something to say. Go ahead, y'all.
Well, I'll say really quickly. Oh, so sorry.
Heather? No, go ahead, Maya. No. You're super important.
So,
because I got a lot to say, child.
I was going to say just 2 quick things. One, too comfortable. Joe Biden has to recognize that, like a lot of white people, they feel like that have been around black community, have friends, work around us. They feel all of a sudden they can say what they want to say. They got too comfortable. They don't recognize that's not their experience, not our experience. Joe needs to recognize that. Another thing he needs to recognize is when people say that black people are not a monolith. That's totally true. But at the same time, as a group, we vote higher than any other group. We vote 6% higher than any other group. So courting our vote is essential to anyone's win. And we saw that in the last election. So I know that Joe Biden in that moment, the last thing I'll say is I hope that he learned from that. I hope that he doesn't have Simone Sanders do his heavy lifting for him. Shout out to Simone, I appreciate what you're doing. But Joe needs to learn from this moment and recognize what he did was wrong, and it was insulting. So I will say that, and I will stop.
And I'm just I'm gonna just jump in really fast, and I'm gonna try to keep this as brief as I can. But there's some things that I definitely want to get off of my chest. Number one, I am a 3rd generation Black Midwesterner, okay? The only reason that the Midwest and certain states, particularly Illinois, is blue and a safe blue state is simply because of the county that I live in, which is the same county that houses Chicago, Illinois. I lived down the street from Barack Obama for the first 3 years of my life. I can walk to the man's mansion from my old home, okay? My Black grandmother was born in Chicago. My grandfather was an immigrant. My grandparents migrated up here during the Great Migration. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Great Migration, I would suggest taking a look at that map and understanding where Blacks went during that time. So with that being said, Black people are all over this country. We live everywhere. We live in, small bubbles, in small, in cities. We live in rural towns. The state of Missouri was a slave state. Okay. There were slaveholders in Missouri. The state of Oklahoma is a historically Black state. Okay. So I need for people to understand, particularly those who believe that, we don't exist until it's time to talk about, gun rates and gang crime and all of those things. Black people are here, and we hear the things that you say, and Black people are not a monolith, and we deserve to be courted, especially because we do vote every time. And we are the base of the Democratic Party. I'm going to emphasize that again. We are the base of the Democratic Party, not the GOP, not, swing state voters or Republican, voters one day and then, never Trump the next day. It is Black voters. There's no consensus about that. So when you're thinking about a winning strategy, Black people need to be front and center. We need to be involved as well as other minority groups. Excite the base, Joe.
Sid, I appreciate you for bringing it up. That's actually a good point. And I think one of the things that's actually lost in this entire debacle is that right after Joe's gaffe, Charlamagne had the best response you could have possibly had in that situation, where it was, no, it ain't about voting for Trump. It's about what are you going to do for us specifically. Excellent answer. And I think, again, that's being overshadowed in the instance. But Heather, you had something you want to add to it?
Yeah, and I think another thing that, what Joe needs to understand is that one, we're trying to create a space for them to down the line get this right. So we're not being critical to the point of you ain't getting our vote. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is we want you to be able to go into spaces and not mess it up. Because this is something where it's actually really hurtful. You know what I mean? To not only see it all over Twitter, that's where I found it, and then I see the clip of it, and it's deeply hurtful to grow up and you hear, oh, well, you ain't Black enough. You ain't this and you ain't that. And then to have Joe Biden, of all people, say that as if he's trying to make a joke. Like, oh, well, if you don't vote for me, then you ain't really Black. And so that, for me, is where I took it. I took offense to it. It wasn't necessarily, because like we want a seat at the table and you should be happy. That wasn't really where I was coming from. I was just angry at the fact that he had the nerve to really get on go on a Black media show and say this out of his mouth and think it was okay, think it was funny. So yeah, that's really all I have to add to it. I just hope that this is a learning experience for him, and I hope that whoever is around him, I don't really want to just put it on Simone, but I hope that they are able to teach him and get him to understand that there is history with those comments. And he, of all people, does not need to be saying it, especially as someone who wants to be president of the United States.
Like I said, you're getting too comfortable. Reecie, what do you want to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, let me just start by acknowledging that there are a large number of Black people that are like, I don't give a damn what Joe Biden says, I'm still voting for him. And I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is that chorus is so loud that it shields Joe Biden from the reality that you are not getting the level of Black support that you need. Okay, NBC News polling shows that you are at 81% of Black support. Okay, that's down from 3% since April. Now we've seen Trump fuck shit up. 90-something thousand deaths, 1.5 million Americans infected with coronavirus, 38 million people unemployed. Yet your numbers are still going down with Black people. So that means at the chorus of, it doesn't matter what Joe says, Joe can be on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I would still vote for him. That chorus of Black people is not resonating, Joe, in the Joe Biden campaign with the other Blacks that feel like Joe Biden needs to earn my vote. What people fail to realize, and this is where the Democratic Party is losing ground with Black people, they're not losing ground to the Republicans, they're losing ground to the disaffected camp. Okay, they're losing ground to the turnout camp, all right? Because what people fail to realize is that when they see comments like that, they say, well, there's no difference between how Republicans talk and how Democrats talk. That's the kind of way that lands with people. And so if you want Joe Biden to win, and I think that we do because he's our best option, he's our only option at this point, then you need to be honest with Joe. the chorus of people that wants to handicap Joe, and I do not mean that as any kind of pejorative to the disability community, but the people who want to shield him, the cavalry that comes out every time that he fucks up, y'all are doing him a disservice, because what he's doing now is losing ground. That is an empirical fact. He is polling behind where Hillary Clinton was polling in 2016, and Hillary Clinton lost ground from where Obama was. That's just an empirical fact. Let's talk facts here, people. So we have to start listening to people. You guys like to shout people down and say, oh, you just want Trump to win. Or, oh, you know, you just have a problem with Joe. You're a Bernie supporter. You're a Trumper. You're a whatever. Meanwhile, there's a whole silent camp over there that's just like saying, I'm not going to vote. I don't see a difference. Why do I need to vote for any one of them? My life is not going to change. I'm still going to be unemployed. I'm still not going to have health insurance. Or I'm still going to have my same job. I'm still going to be working 2 or 3 jobs. There's a large group of people that feel that way. They're not engaged in the process. And the way that you engage them is not looking them in the face and saying, come on, man, you know my record. You know what I've done. The way that you engage them is not saying I was Barack Obama's vice president for 8 years. You have to step it up. And to Heather's point, you have to do it before you run out of time to do it. This whole notion that you're just going to skate by with what we saw, people can defend you all day on Twitter, but when those comments become an attack ad and digital ads that the Trump campaign is going to put $250 million towards suppressing the Black vote, they're going to replay those comments, and there's not going to be any context. Oh, that's coming from the Trump campaign, or oh, that's coming from Republican. It's just going to be Joe Biden's comments on repeat. So what he needs to do is to be cognizant of how he's speaking to Black people. He needs to be cognizant of the fact that he does have to earn the Black vote, regardless of what the very loud chorus of I don't give a damn what but Joe Biden does, he's going to get my vote. Black people, you still have to earn the vote. And I said that throughout the entire primary. And I said that as a Kamala Harris supporter, making the case to people to support Kamala on a substantive basis. If I had said, if you don't vote for the Black person, you ain't Black, do you know how much I would have got fired up if Kamala Harris had said, if you don't vote for the Black person, then you ain't Black? The way that we heard people over and over again say, well, just because you Black, I'm not going to vote for you. So now you have Joe Biden saying, if you don't vote for him, you're not Black. That's problematic, and you're doing a huge disservice to him by not being honest about it. You can be honest about it. You can hold him accountable so that he gets better. And this is where the cultural competency to come into Black spaces, you can't ignore them, you can't avoid them, is lacking in Joe Biden. It's lacking in the white woman that he is considering for vice president. Amy Klobuchar didn't even do the Breakfast Club. She didn't do Black media. Elizabeth Warren, she didn't fare too well on the Breakfast Club either. Now, there was a little controversy with people trying to pick up on certain things that Kamala said during the Breakfast Club interview, but at the end of the day, she gave 2 45-minute substantive interviews to the Breakfast Club where she made a case for a Black agenda to Black and Latino people who are the predominant listeners. That Joe Biden interview was 10 minutes before they started cutting it off. And so don't get comfortable. Don't be flippant. Don't take us for granted, because all the people in your ear are not the people you have to worry about. It's the people that you don't hear about that just are flat out not going to show up to vote.
Yes, God, get rid of all them yes men in your camp, okay? You need somebody who's going to hold you damn accountable.
I want to make one comment real quick before we move on. Number one, it's been 3.5 years of Trump. If you don't know, how the song go? If you don't know me by now, meaning that in sometime in the next 12 to 24 hours, he's going to say something really stupid to blow this out the water. We're going to forget all about it by next week. I'm just going to let you know straight up. I'm being real with you. As much as, you're going to forget. Trust me. Don't ever underestimate Trump's ability to be stupid.
Also, don't underestimate $100 million in digital ads. The Trump campaign has already spent over $500 million on digital ads. And so that is where people have to understand the capacity that the Republicans have to weaponize this. I'm not with the Republicans when I criticize Joe on this. I'm for Black people being treated with some respect and earning our votes. However, They are, as Maya pointed out, they are very, very skilled at weaponizing this, the same way they weaponize all these types of things against Hillary Clinton. And so he'd be wise to give them as few things for fodder as possible.
And Joe, we're not trying to tackle you. We're not trying to pile on you. We're just trying to help you out, because this is only going to make you a better candidate. I just want to, throw that in there, because I know it can be a lot. But we are trying to actually build you up. This is a critique. This is something that you can work on as time moves forward, okay?
That's true. One other comment I want to make, Eric Metaxas, who is the evangelical, made a comment today on Twitter, I think it's actually still up, where he said, breaking, just now Joe Biden tried, he's a Trump supporter, breaking, just now Joe Biden tried and failed to walk back his "you ain't black" comment by saying, "Sure enough, you is for shizzle ain't black, cause Master Trump be fixing to put all y'all's behinds back in chains. You done got yourselves no choice in this here." And that's for sure, for sure. That's a white man, Trump supporter, who tweeted that on there. So when I say never underestimate the power of the folks, you're right, Reecie. Digital ads, $100 million. I'm not that discounting that, but also not to be outdone is those other folks. As Lupe Fiasco says, Sydney, she knows what that is. Moving on. We want to mention also not forget, even in the midst of this, that when we have a Kamala Harris now whose name is now in this mix, not just because of this debacle, not just because it's debacle, but it's amplified because it's debacle. Homegirl was trending the other day on Twitter. Almost like she was going Super Saiyan 3, Dragon Ball Z reference. But Kamala Harris, Val Demings' name has also been mentioned as far as vetting for vice president. But we also, Stacey Abrams, the name continues to be mentioned as well. Susan Rice continues to be mentioned as well. The commonality in these names, of course, Marsha Fudge as well, is gifted in black. And understanding that our gifted and black people are put to the forefront. What Charlamagne was asking for is not too much. It was a basic thing. What are you going to do for us? Other people saying we need to have a seat at the table, and not just have a seat at the table, because there's people in Detroit, black folk, praising Donald Trump, talking about something. He needs to found an HBCU. We need to make sure we have the table with voices for us, our gifted and black folk. Reecie, I know you wanted to speak to this specifically. How do we get or amplify our gifted and black talents?
Well, we're live with the KHive, so we talking about the gifted and talented black Kamala Harris. Be clear about that. But in terms of the discussion around Black women and identity and qualifications, I've mentioned this before. There is this notion, and this very pervasive media notion, that you are either in the identity camp, which is they put all the blacks in that, or you are in the competent, the talented, the governance camp, the qualified camp. And it is complete bullshit that these are put on opposite ends of the spectrum. When you have a Kamala Harris, Senator Kamala Harris, who I've said it before and I'll say it again, has gotten the most votes, period, millions more votes than everybody else under consideration, okay, on a statewide level, multiple times, as an executive, a statewide executive, and as a senator. And so the problem that I have is when you have a narrative that says, well, when you're talking about the economy, you're only talking about Elizabeth Warren, despite the fact that Senator Kamala Harris has a monthly economic crisis support act, which is $2,000 a month, plus $1,000 per child for people to have essentially a universal basic income throughout the course of this pandemic. Okay, when you have Kamala Harris, who has introduced the Save Our Streets Act, which is about small businesses. When you have Senator Kamala Harris that is reaching out to the Department of Labor about protections for minority workers. When you have Kamala Harris, who is tackling this coronavirus pandemic, who has always put out some of the most progressive economic policies, which was her LIFT Act, which was prior to the campaign, also her Rent Relief Act, and tackling the economy in many different facets as the Attorney General of California, she had economic responsibilities because, again, the Attorney General is not just a cop, okay, the top cop of that state, which, by the way, California is the largest state in the country, the 5th largest economy, all right? But as Attorney General, she put forth the Homeowners Bill of Rights. That was a massive part of the economic crisis that led to the economic crisis, was the foreclosures and the banking crisis and things like that. And so she had an instrumental part in securing the largest mortgage settlement in the history of the country. So when we're talking about the economy, this isn't an Elizabeth Warren topic. It's also a Kamala Harris topic. When we talk about voting rights, if you want to just say voting rights, okay, well, Amy Klobuchar has a bill, so does Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris has her Vote Safe Act, which does all the things that everybody else has put forth. It's put it in one bill, and it's put the most funding towards elections, securing our elections, than anybody else has. Many, many incredibly smart ideas that have been signed on to by organizations like the ACLU and things of that nature. So the voting rights subject is not just an Amy Klobuchar topic, or even Stacey Abrams for that matter. It's also a Senator Kamala Harris topic. When you want to talk about the environment, Senator Kamala Harris has put forth the Water Justice Act, Climate Justice Act. She has done all sorts of things tackling the hurricane crisis, the wildfires crisis. She's done a lot of work for the state of California as well. And so you cannot simply put Kamala Harris, a gifted and Black, talented and Black, exceptionally qualified Black woman, as simply this Black figurehead, this token, when she has an extensive record of getting things done. Any topic that you can name for anybody else, I could keep going and going and going. Senator Kamala Harris has addressed it in some sort of way, okay? She's addressed it, whether it's as AG or she's addressed it again as senator. We talk about children's justice. She had the Bureau of Children's Justice, and as AG, nobody in this race has a better record when it comes to children's advocacy. I will say that unequivocally, the Senator Kamala Harris. She is unmatched in that when it comes to sexual assault and fighting for those victims, when it comes to gun violence and things of that nature. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the course of the show. Senator Kamala Harris's record is bar none. And so what we have to stop doing in this conversation is accepting the zero-sum narratives that frame Black and competent. And by competent, they mean white. Black, they mean just Black. It does not apply. And even though I did say KHive and it's Kamala, there are other Black women that are also gifted and talented. But again, like I said, we're emphasizing Kamala Harris because that's what we do here. But I reject the notion of Black, and it's not just a vice presidential thing, it's for anything of that simply being a token thing. It's about representation, it's about the skills and the cultural competency, the cultural empathy, and the qualifications that you cannot outsource to another person, that these Black women, particularly and especially Senator Kamala Harris, brings to the table.
I think this just goes into my purpose, like my point earlier on in the video. Black women have to work 10 times harder, run 5 times faster, and then get either half the credit or none whatsoever. And it's literally what we said in the last few videos of a few episodes before in Live with the KHive. This is a gentrification of progressivism. So it's ridiculous. What is it going to take for you guys to see the value in Black leadership? It's ridiculous. I mean, we've been asking for a seat at the table. We've been asking to be seen and be heard, but it just seems like you keep taking our work ethic, everything that we do, for granted, and we're getting tired of it, honestly.
Well, I know what would work to fix this.
I know one. I think I know another one too.
Well, I have seen that the media does really well on reporting on people that look like them. And according to the Women's Media Center, 86.1% of the media is white males. And only 2.62% are Black women. I'm talking front of camera. I'm talking journalists. I'm talking leadership positions. 2.62. Okay? So this is one of the issues that we have. They don't feel that they are interested in reporting these issues in a fair way. They don't feel like they see these issues in a fair way. They don't think that these issues are important to them. And so to me, what needs to happen is a leadership position change across the board in media. There has to be, and us having these conversations is how these things start changing. I mean, obviously I would like this to be accelerated. And one of the things that I hope, and I would love to have a conversation with Kamala Harris personally, is how do we change this leadership position in media? Because things aren't going to change if we don't change aspects of media as well. We have to always do this through policy. I mean, this is why we love Kamala Harris, because she's making these changes effective through policy. So there needs to be a policy change across the board in media.
Do you think that like us as the public have some sort of power to hold the media responsible? Because one thing that we saw during the primaries is this, like if everybody was talking about how diverse the primaries was, this is the most diverse group that we've seen. But it's funny that the media literally pushed out all the minorities first and left them out of polling data, left them out of the Giffords Gun Forum commercial. It just continued. And we just slowly saw us disappear off the debate stage and disappear out of the media mentions altogether until we completely dropped out.
Yeah, I think that one of the things is that I know that BIPOC communities have, I think the number, I'll make sure, is either 3.9 trillion or at least 1.5 trillion in spending power. I mean, that's the thing. We have the money combined to kind of change this. What's tough about it is a lot of the issues, and we know Kamala Harris talks about these food on the table issues, kitchen table issues are all the things that you not only talk about at the table, but or what gets to be put on the table, right? So one of the things that is being talked about is how are we spending our money? Most of the times it's just to get our basic bills paid, right? But other the times it's like, how are we investing? And I think one of the things to organize is through media, because I think that we need to have ownership in media in a very serious way. I was really happy when I saw Magic Johnson owns a station. I don't know what he's doing with it yet. I look at the programming, I'm like, Magic, I love you, but what are you doing? You know, so we're getting, we got Oprah, we got Tyler Perry, you know, but it's like, there's Byron Allen. Oh, see, I just named all the leaders that are in the industry. So we need more.
But even with those leaders, I just didn't see that much. I don't necessarily know. Maybe Kamala's team might be able to say something, or maybe, you know, Julian Castro, Cory Booker. I just don't know. Did Oprah, Tyler Perry, like give these Black and brown people a platform is the question. Like, are they even someone we could actually look to and say, oh, you know, Oprah, Tyler Perry, especially being the fact that he has a whole studio in Atlanta. I mean, are they literally reaching out to us to make sure that what is being of Black leadership is actually being represented and they actually have a platform, since the white media is leaving them out? Like, these gatekeepers, do we need to create our own spaces, or what should we do?
Yes. I will say just one, I'll say one last thing and then I want to just talk, but like, it's like when Michael Jordan, I hope everyone saw the amazing documentary series about The Last Dance, but Michael Jordan, it was very controversial when he said even Republicans buy shoes. And one of the reasons why he didn't want to get politically involved. Unfortunately, I feel that is some of the philosophy, and Oprah has the right to feel that way, and Tyler Perry has the right to feel that way. However, that means we need to have a more inclusive ownership in media, because we're not monolithic. And if that's how Oprah and Tyler want to feel, that is how they can feel about it. But we also need people that are going to uplift Black leadership and show all the amazing things that we're doing.
That's absolutely true. Heather, I was wondering if you had a response to this, at least as far as even if it's, we understand the Black representation, but even from the Latino community as well. Like, what would that perspective at least stand? Like, as far as when we're talking about, as far as the representation in media, the representation, the way we're packaged, the way we're presented, and like Kenny said, people didn't understand us. That's how you can get a ski weed to sound like a screech, according to one journalist. Again, because we're not represented, people don't know our culture. So when it's presented in front of them, it's completely foreign, and then you end up getting roasted on Black Twitter. How does that, you know, even when we're talking about maybe from the Latino community as well, how do you have any thoughts on maybe how to improve things? Or
I mean, I think what it all comes down to is at the end of the day, we as a people have to be supportive of the spaces that are there. There are quite a few spaces where, you know what I mean? Like people are already doing the work and they've been doing the work. And it's really just a matter of, you know, instead of us looking for mainstream media and supporting those avenues, well, we need to lift up as a community the Black and Latino podcasters. We need to lift up journalists who are doing their job. I mean, I specifically remember not too long ago, I think Kenny, you were interviewed by, what was her name? Kat Stafford from AP. And I think
yes, I was.
I thought you said Kat. Oh my God. Go ahead.
That she's committed to bringing the forefront, like the Black issues to the forefront. And so I know, I remember seeing her on Roland. Roland is someone who has dedicated, you know what I mean, his entire career to lifting to Black voices and Black media and creating a space for us. So, I mean, I think that there's definitely areas there where, you know what I mean, we can do more. But I'm not really in the space of, you know, criticizing to the point where, you know what I mean, I'm forgetting the people who are already doing the work. I think there's a lot of people who are doing the work that we have to continue to shout out and continue to support.
That's a great point. I understand, like everybody, it's easy to criticize, and we should criticize. We should be critical of what's happening in the shortcomings. But again,
can I ask a quick question real quick? Because I just want to bring it back to Kamala real quick. So with media, I think towards the end of Kamala Harris's campaign, she started doing more Black media because she understood the value in Black media and having representation and speaking to our issues to us. So her last few weeks of running, she created her own platform with that Black women's, you know, leadership get together with Higher Heights. Reecie, you were involved in that. Could you tell us exactly how that kind of looked?
Yeah, so Kamala Harris did a Black Woman Weekend of Action in South Carolina, and that was really, truly the first time that Black women were brought together. Nobody was paid to do that. It was completely volunteer, and it was a Black woman-centered weekend put on by senior level Black woman staffers, national Black woman staffers, as well as local Black woman staffers. And I think what it shows is, again, that Black women can make shit happen. I remember Maya Harris tweeted, I think it was 2 days ago, and she said woman of color, but let's be clear, Black woman lead, period, or Black woman lead, period. And I think honestly that the onus is truly on us. And I think that, to your point, Kamala Harris has figured out that the onus is on her to control her own narrative. And that's why you see her doing far more town halls. And part of it is also the digital opportunities that have presented themselves throughout this pandemic, and her coming up to speed with Zoom and Instagram Live and things like that. There is a learning curve, but that does provide her the ability to reach more people more frequently. So the onus, though, and I said this throughout the campaign, the onus is truly on us to help change the narrative when we do have that control through platforms like this, through our own social media, and educating people and making a substantive argument about why Senator Kamala Harris is the right person because of her competence, because of her skills to be VP. Yes, it's very important that we have a Black woman VP. However, the reason that it's important is because a Black woman is uniquely positioned, particularly somebody with Kamala Harris's background and receipts and qualifications, to stand at the seat of the table and not say, come on, man, and say, we have to fight for these communities. She has done that time and time again. She's doing that, and she's not allowing us to be left behind and left unspoken for throughout this pandemic. And so if we don't speak up, we cannot wait for these platforms. Even on any kind of show, there are still panelists on that show that may or may not represent for us, you know? So when I'm on rolling, I make sure that if there's a Kamala connection, you damn right I'm going to make that Kamala connection, because there's a good chance that the 4 other days of the show, she's not going to be brought up, even though she's working on these issues. And maybe Elizabeth Warren will be brought up, or maybe Bernie Sanders will be brought up, and Kamala Harris will be brought up. So if we don't bring these things up, if we don't speak up, then we're going to constantly be subjected to the narratives that others create. And these narratives are not narratives that give us the credit we deserve for what we bring to the table.
Well, this pandemic.
That was the word right there. Good God.
Well, and she did. She
Can
speaking. She preached.
Can I jump in?
Can
I jump in just to add one?
Wait, we said it. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Sid.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good, Drew. I just wanted to kind of add
Go ahead.
I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I just wanted to add a bit of 2 cents here in regards to what it takes in the media. I am a former content coordinator for a small media company. And I can tell you that a lot of media is incentivized based on engagement, based on clicks, you know, and everyone in the media space is chasing a dollar. We've unfortunately done our media personnel a disservice by not, you know, prioritizing funding these jobs. So of course, the only people that have access to these jobs, just like free internships, are the most privileged people in the world who can, you know, who have, you know, funds where they can live and work for free. But what I implore people to do, if you're not seeing the response from mainstream media, please utilize your outlets to raise your voice. I am an independent journalist for that reason. I did not want to have hands in my, you know, in my work, and I left the industry and said, if I have to make money, I can go do it selling software. And that's exactly what I did. So I encourage everyone, if you have a voice, if you have background in media, just start your own thing, start your platform. And you'll do yourself a disservice, or you'll do your community you'll do yourself a service, and you'll do your community a service as well.
Sydney, I'm glad you brought that up. It's a good point. If you don't have your own space, if you don't have a space, you can make your own. Especially in the digital age, it's very, very easy. Maya, Kamala had a recent meeting recently, just in terms of gun safety, public health. Can you expound on that one for us, please?
Yeah, Kamala had an amazing meeting with Shannon Watts, who's the founder of Moms Demand Action, and Senator Harris had a wonderful conversation about fighting gun violence in the age of COVID specifically, but she actually touched on a couple of topics. I hope that you watch the video. It's actually pinned to Shannon Watts' page, so you can see it that way. But one of the things that she touched on was stand your ground laws, which are pretty terrible. If you don't know what stand your ground law is, I'm going to quote it. It is a law that is met force with force, including deadly force, if he or she feels a reason to feel threatened or confronted. And Kamala Harris basically broke that down to say, listen, these laws are used oftentimes to kill Black and brown people. It gives cover to do something like that for people who are motivated by racism and racial profiling. She also discussed how in America there's 2 systems of justice, right? There's one for Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and there's one for Michael Flynn. Who, you know, probably will not serve any real time. So, and obviously we know one of the most famous stand your ground laws that was evoked to defend a terrible person in Florida who has, I'm not going to say his name, when he murdered Trayvon Martin in 2012. So Kamala got into stand your ground laws and an amazing, wonderful policy that she would like to see to change that. She also discussed COVID and what's been happening with racial disparities during COVID. She talked about how small businesses, Black and brown businesses were getting shut out of funding. We kind of touched on that last week, but she also discussed about Black and brown people disproportionately dying during COVID as well. And I wanted to quickly bring up that Dr. Ibram X. Kendi he runs the Anti-Racism Center in Washington, D.C. He started a COVID tracker, the COVID Racial Data Tracker. It's a collaboration between COVID Tracking Project and the Anti-Racist Research Policy Center. So you can go to covidtracking.com/race. Kamala Harris also touched on her Vote Safe Act, which would lend $5 billion, it would invest $5 billion into states across America to ensure that we have safe elections during COVID. And one of the other topics you touched on was the NRA funding a lot of these protests that are happening across the United States, that they are astroturfed instead of grassroots. Grassroots, as we know, is when it's an organic movement that happens, like Black Lives Matter would be a grassroots movement. An astroturf movement is what we're seeing across America right now, where people are going and protesting these governors and under the idea that they're doing it for workers, when they're really not. There's an alternate paid agenda underneath there, and the NRA is supplementing that. So I was happy that Kamala touched on all those topics, but Drew, she also touched on something that I wasn't really familiar with, and that was ghost guns. And I think you know more about that than I do.
Yes, actually, ghost guns. So basically, in this age of 3D printing technology, what people actually are able to do is 3D print different gun parts and actually create their own firearms in their own homes, pistols, shotguns. Like Lil Wayne said, and she keep asking, how would shoot if it's plastic? Well, you can actually do these plastic material if you have a 3D printer. It actually allows you to create these. The downside to that is that when you're creating these parts, they have no serial numbers, so they're untraceable. So now organizations like the ATF, for instance, their job is that much harder because you have no way to trace this. So if these guns are used in a crime, in a mass shooting, like the one that we saw in Arizona near Glendale recently, I thought about you when that actually happened, but you have no way to trace back and say, okay, how was this obtained? Not saying that that was the case in Arizona, but I am saying that if it is used in a situation like that, we have really no way to know. First off, when we're tracing guns, you want to know if they are connected to other homicides or any other violent incidences as well. There's ballistics, they run on weapons where you can say, oh wait, this gun was used to kill 4 or 5 people in these cities or these locations and such. So what Senator Richard Blumenthal actually proposed was his Untraceable Firearms Act of 2020. So basically what this does is it actually requires these particular 3D printing sites, the software that allows you to do that, to actually now use or have serial numbers included on these parts for the purposes of tracing. There's actually support for that. Obviously, it's supported on the Democratic ticket. Kamala Harris is actually a co-sponsor of this particular bill. This makes perfect sense, keeping in her history with gun or history against gun violence, prosecuting gun crimes. That was something that she did not take lightly as San Francisco DA. Even when before she even became DA, when she was a prosecutor in the San Francisco DA's office, when she was a prosecutor in Alameda County's office, she was the one focused on gun crimes, creating gun task force and such to address those particular issues. And again, you see her, I say all the time, a touch makes a move. It's up to her old tricks again. But again, the issue is not looking at guns as these are not, well, you can't call them anomalies. This is America. Guns are about as normal as a rainstorm, but which is sad, man. But seriously, but it's also looking at it from a public health aspect as well. When you have people dying at these ridiculous rates, gun deaths can rival any other pandemic outside of COVID-19 that we've had, and it's something that she wants to focus on and make sure that it's addressed. So I know I feel safer knowing that she's on it, but again, we still need to make sure that number one, that these bills get passed into law in time. They're not going to make it with a Trump administration. I'm sorry, he's holding to the NRA. If Joe Biden is the person that he says he is going to be, to stand up to the NRA and not give a what. I gotta watch my language. My mom might be watching, but you know what I'm saying. Then you need to be serious and take this seriously, because overall gun deaths particularly hit our community hard. So if you imagine any type of issues like that, where we are now not able to trace these weapons back to what's happening, that just opens a whole can of worms and a whole Pandora's box that we really don't want to deal with. Heather, did you want to jump in?
Oh, actually, do you mind, Drew, if I jump in real quick? So one thing I wanted to jump in on is, again, I like to emphasize receipts when it comes to action, because a lot of people can put out plans, a lot of people can talk a good game, but as Attorney General, Senator Kamala Harris actually made gun control a very important part of what she did. During her tenure as Attorney General, California passed some of the most tough gun control laws, but also what she did specifically is fight for increased funding for this database. It was called the Armed Prohibited People's Database. And, you know, let me just look this up. I had it pulled up. Make sure I say it right. I don't like to be saying stuff wrong. It was called... Yeah, let me make sure. Armed Prohibited Persons Systems Database, the APPS database. And this is something that she was very insistent upon in terms of increasing funding for that. And so as a result of those measures, they were able to confiscate thousands of guns. In one gun seizure, they confiscated 2,000 guns, getting these guns off the streets. And so she actually has a record when she was in a position of doing something about it, and not just giving pretty speeches on the floors, and actually getting guns out of the hands of people. Now, during the presidential campaign, she obviously proposed very tough gun control measures in terms of gun control measures on online sales, closing the boyfriend loophole, and all kinds of things that allowed the Charleston massacre to occur, that hate crime. She put forth a proposal, and during her tenure in the Senate, she has tackled domestic terrorism, okay, and questioning the FBI and really trying to get to the bottom of what that means to our country. A lot of the incidents that we've seen in terms of mass gun violence have been acts of domestic terrorism. And so that's the kind of thing where we talk about these gun violence and gun control, we have to acknowledge that she's a person who actually gets stuff done.
Amen. Sydney.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Reecie, you make a really, really comprehensive, well thought out point. And I just want to kind of just, you know, piggyback off of that, just from my experience. I keep reiterating, I'm a third generation Chicagoan. And for the last 10 years, Chicago has been in the media. We have an entire genre of music that was created around the significant gun violence. In fact, I was forced to move out of the city, away from my neighborhood, because my own family was affected by gang violence and gun violence. And that's something that is pretty common here. It's kind of like, you know, LA. If you're from Chicago, you know that someone in your family is probably gang affiliated if you're Black. That's just how it is here. That's the culture. But with that being said, years ago, I had a conversation with a family friend who was a CPD officer, who talked about these militias that are basically hiding and stockpiling these weapons of, you know, mass destruction, these large magazine capable assault rifles. Some of these arsenals are up to 1,500 firearms in one sitting, and they're hiding them. They're like ticking time bombs. You know, we talk a lot. I've heard a lot about like terrorist cells and things of that nature, and sleeper cells that we have here in the United States. But what we don't talk about is that domestic terrorism has a ton of sleeper cells. The Midwest is a hotbed for white supremacist militias and things of that nature. And the one thing that I really honored about what Kamala is doing is that she's really bringing these issues to the forefront, and she's zeroing in on the particular issue that this causes. Because what a lot of people don't know is that, you know, Illinois has one of the strictest gun laws in the state. We have we are a gun control state. You can't even buy firearms in the state of Illinois for the most part. Majority of the guns that we have on the streets of Chicago are coming in from Wisconsin. They're coming in from Michigan. They're coming in from Missouri. They're coming in directly from Indiana. I mean, we're literally sitting on the Indiana border. East Chicago is Indiana. That is the city in Indiana. So with that being said, there is a network that is working. There are white supremacist terrorist groups on the south and west sides of Chicago selling these guns as partners to the gangs. So, you know, their one goal is to eliminate the Black community, to eliminate the brown community. You know, there's also talks of the cartel being here. So there's a lot of things that we don't know about as, you know, civilians, as citizens, that Kamala, with her background in law enforcement, if she's not already privy to, she would be able to know how to be privy to this information, and she would be able to know where exactly this comes from. And that is what makes her such a valuable asset to anyone's administration, including her own. This is what makes her such a profound leader, is that she knows the channels in which these operations are happening. I think that that's what makes her such a unique candidate in this cycle, especially considering, you know, that we are the generation of Columbine. I've lost friends every year since 2009 to gun violence and violent murder. That's not a hyperbole. That is fact. I've been shot at twice, just walking down the street in Chicago. This is something that we deal with. This is something that, half of the country is largely shielded from because they live in, racially homogeneous, suburban areas where these type of things don't happen, and they only see this stuff occurring on the news. So, they don't have a personal, relationship with this kind of trauma. So with that being said, I want to emphasize again that Kamala has an eye that is not just, that doesn't just make her just a Black figurehead. And her being a Black politician is just a plus. But the reason that we support her is because of these particular things in itself, because of her ability to pay attention to detail, because of her ability to really get down to what is really happening and the things that, are really affecting our communities. And again, that's what makes her such an asset in my eyes.
That's well said. That's well said. I'm glad you mentioned the fact that, Illinois has some of the strictest gun laws in America. However, you're sitting right next to Indiana, which has some of the most lax gun laws in the entire United States of America. And gun running is actually a major racket there. As a matter of fact, ATF agents have reported this, law enforcement, FBI, and these are all Google facts. You can actually look, they're public about it. But gun running is a major industry from Indiana into Chicago into Illinois. So
Indiana, Wisconsin, Ohio, Iowa, Missouri, Minnesota. So these, again, Illinois is kind of like just, this kind of like, we're this island of blue sitting in a sea of red. We are the blue state sitting in a sea of red states. And again, this is why this is such an important conversation to have, because we always talk about, gun violence when it's time to discuss the victims and what's wrong with the community and why can't, these Black people stop killing each other, these brown people stop killing each other, why can't they stop selling crack, why can't they do this? But we never talk about, the steps to get to, this point. We never talk about, what leads, how these guns get into the hands of, these children that are killing each other on the streets. We just want to make them the responsible parties. But what I found out years ago was that, we don't know how many of these gun deaths are actually by the hands of, Black and brown people. I've heard rumors of, white supremacists doing drive-bys in Black neighborhoods. And because they're in tinted windows, we don't know who they are. They're just doing drive-bys. And because, there's a culture of, no snitching, detectives don't even bother to research these, these cases, these deaths, because they just conclude them as another, casualty of the streets. But it's a lot more sinister than that. And, we saw this with the case of Ahmaud Arbery, where we see action in work of, we see whiteness working. We see, that if Ahmaud Arbery, if there wasn't a video that had surfaced to the internet, that would have probably, his death would have just been seen as a casualty of the streets, interracial crime, Black on Black crime. But what we saw was that this was a lynching, a modern day lynching done in front of us on, and it's all over the world now. And that's what's happening here in my city as well, and in Detroit and places like St. Louis and New Orleans. We don't know exactly, how pervasive this is. And what Kamala Harris is proposing is that we look at this from a public health standpoint. We look at this from the standpoint of domestic terrorism. We start taking these things serious. So again, I'm going to end on that note, but this is something I've been very passionate about. Rest in peace, Kappa Steve. Rest in peace to all of the friends that I have that are no longer with us because of the gun violence that, you know, has plagued Chicago, and Chicago will heal. I have all faith in that. I love my city, and I think we will grow from this.
I also want to say rest in peace, Dennis Hale, North Carolina A&T, victim of gun violence back in 2009, January. So that when you were speaking of it, he actually came to my heart. So
yes,
and
and that's to my friend Steve Agee from Northern Illinois University, who lost his life in 2011. To his mother, if you're watching this, Steve is still very much so in my heart. We love you, Kappa Steve. We love you, Mrs. Agee. And thank you guys so much for allowing us to have your son.
Can I say something real quick?
Go ahead, because we're going to final thoughts anyway. So go ahead. Lead it up.
All right. Just to kind of sum all of that up, I mean, Kamala Harris has had a record in tackling all these issues. As Attorney General and DA, literally, she was looking at all the backlogs of all the homicide victims and literally trying to make people understand that this wasn't just a statistic. But even past that, even as running, you know, for president, she wanted to actually have a nurse in every school to make sure that she tackles, you know, crime prevention and understanding there's mental illness and, you know, the mental health of our children was actually causing these, but what's the root of all of these mass shootings? What's the root of what's actually going on with these children? So, I mean, Kamala Harris already had proposals to do that. And then on top of that, and this is the sad thing, Kamala Harris was demonized for going after Donald Trump because of she called for his Twitter to be suspended due to the fact that Trump actually gave the ammunition to the El Paso shooter as another domestic terrorism. So I you know, Kamala Harris has already been on this type of thing. And it's funny that now people are finally trying to like chime into the things that he's doing and actually chiming in on what Kamala Harris has already asked for and was already taking the front for. So I just wanted to just throw that out there because I don't think we ever addressed that little small topic, but go ahead.
No, we didn't know. They late and $1 short. That's what folk are. In this case, they 7 months late and $5 short, $100 short.
Too late. And Joe, you need somebody with that kind of hindsight on your team, like Kamala Harris. She already knows. Who's damn near that's so Raven. Okay, she saw the future and she saw what was going on.
Word up. Final thoughts, Maya. What you got?
My final thoughts are I don't want people to get distracted on any level. What Joe did today is not a distraction. It's okay to address it. It's okay to call it out. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that we have Black people are 13% of the population and 25% of the COVID deaths. What I'm saying is right now we need to recognize that we have a really horrific issue on our hands, and that is something that Trump does not want to talk about. And I am obviously always thrilled that Kamala Harris is putting this first and foremost. When she met with Shannon, she made sure that that was one of the main issues she's talking about. Not only that, she tied it to income inequality and health issues and all that. So I want all of us to recognize that this isn't something we want to be distracted on. Trump wants to make sure that we're talking about anything else except for the 100,000 people that will be dead by the end of this month from COVID, that 25% of those will be Black and brown people, more than that. And so I hope that when the audience is watching that remembers that we have an election coming up in like 160 days. That's what I hope that people keep on their mind.
Me too. Final thoughts, Heather?
Yeah, and I think what I would say is, what people need to understand is that every day is an opportunity for us to grow and be better. So everything that we hit on, it's a learning experience. So we want to have the best candidate. We want to have the best ticket for us to win in November. And so as allies, you have to be open to criticism. And you need to understand that sometimes if you're going to step in it like Joe did today, then it's our job to correct you.
Word up. And that's a big deal because what we got in the White House right now don't take correction. And he don't apologize. He would have kept it moving, like I said, and just kept stepping. That's a big deal. Sydney, I know you put your heart out there. Did you have any final thoughts? Are we feeling good? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I just, want to reiterate that again. The goal for November is fixing what's been broken. And what I would like to stress again is that you need the base. The base of the party cannot be ignored. We will not be ignored. We're not going to go away. We're not going to be silent. We will criticize, and people need to make concessions based on that. Not anyone else. There is no need to court, any other groups. Excite the base, and you will have a winning strategy.
That's so. Listen, have you ever heard of Republicans like turning away from their base? Like never. They court white Christian conservatives, like or the evangelicals that they real white. They go after that. You never hear them going after anybody else. They stick to their base. Democrats, for some reason, they got to go everywhere else in the world. It's like, yo, you have a base right here. Play to your base. Play to your strengths. Dance with the one that brung you. Pardon my vernacular. Reecie, final thoughts.
Yeah, I wanted to add something to the gun violence topic, so I'll just use that as my final thoughts. But one of the things that I just wanted to emphasize, we talked about gun control, but one of the things that we didn't talk about that is very unique to how Senator Kamala Harris approaches gun violence is she talks about the trauma in our communities as a result of gun violence. And as usual, it's not just a matter of rhetoric for her, it's a matter of having receipts. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight was her work with establishing, she was a founding member. She helped to actually raise $2 million for this organization, the Center for Youth Wellness. This was in the Bayview Point area in San Francisco area. And she worked with the now California Surgeon General. That's the first time we've ever had a Surgeon General. Well, not we, but California has Dr. Nadine Burke Harris. So before she became the California Surgeon General, which again, we have to acknowledge the fact that Senator Kamala Harris is a person who has always lifted as she's climbed, particularly Black women, and given them opportunities. We see the Black woman that she has had affiliations with, we see them do nothing but soar. But anyway, to the point that I wanted to make is that this Center for Youth Wellness, which was established by Dr. Nadine Burke Harris, was really focused on childhood trauma and the fact that many of the diseases that children have is through stressors. And stressors is something that Senator Kamala Harris talks about as it relates to Black maternal health care, as it relates to the COVID pandemic and how Black people are disproportionately impacted by that. But in this particular time, this was also addressing the fact that children had trauma through domestic violence and witnessing all these things like gun violence. And so that was something that, again, goes to her record of constantly advocating for children, putting tangible action, money, time, resources, advocacy towards helping understand and do something about how children are impacted, how our communities are impacted. So I did want to shout out Senator Kamala Harris because she does talk about healthy communities. And when she talks about health communities, as Kenny said, putting a social worker in schools, nurses in schools, and things like that, this is how she truly has a wide and an in-depth view of how things are not just a matter of getting guns off the street, not just a matter of people, prosecuting people tough, and having harsh crimes or sentences for them, but it's a matter of attacking every aspect of the crisis.
Couldn't agree more, no cap. But one thing I just want to mention is that the mentality of a society or the way that you deal with trauma really determines what direction that society goes. Because trauma is inevitable. That's just a part of life. But how we address it, treat it, deal with it, especially when it comes to our children who are literally adults, or they are people who will grow up to be adults one day and carry on. The way you are able to gauge the measure of a society, not only just how it treats its children, but specifically how you deal with trauma in all, but especially in children as well. Kamala Harris has a foresight to do that. She has repeatedly shown that she is 10 steps ahead of it. Like, I'm thinking more rap lyrics. Lil' Kim said that. I'm 10 steps ahead of you. But listen, the thing is that there's just not a better choice for vice president. Vice President Biden has shown that if he is going to be president, you need someone who can not only hold you in check, hold you accountable, but also who has the foresight and the awareness and that field vision, that court vision to see every single possible outcome, account for every little nook and cranny. I have not seen that demonstrated by anyone else other than Kamala Harris. It's not just because she's a black woman. Yes, she is a black woman. She needs to be on the ticket, partly because of that to excite the base. But also in this case, let's just keep it real. She's the best option. She literally is the most, not just the most qualified, she is the best option out there. Even if you took skin color out of it, she still would be head and shoulders above everyone else. So it's a no-brainer. Is there a versus this weekend? Anybody? I heard something.
Oh no.
I heard it was Beanie Man
versus Bounty Hunter. That's gonna be Bounty Killer, I think.
Bounty Killer.
Yeah, he was on a record with No Doubt a long time ago. Hey baby, hey. That's him on that record. That's gonna be dope. That's gonna be real dope. I'm excited.
My culture, hey, listen, South Jersey, right side of Philadelphia, like dancehall reggae, we gets down. Believe that. I've been to a few basement parties where it's hot and sweating.
Chicago too, honey.
I know.
We got a large Caribbean community here, so yes.
Especially, I think Kamala might check that out. She got her Jamaican roots now. That's right up her alley. But if we're not going to go and debate on that, we can just go ahead and say, appreciate y'all spending your time live with the KHive. As I say all the time, we stay live, whether it's night or daytime. Again, chilling here with Maya Contreras, the Sydney, Heather Rose,
what up,
Reecie,
y'all?
My man Kenny, and of course, it's Drew Comments, and we out. Take care.